Welcome. Looks like we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is Real Guitar Live. I'm Thomas Michaud. I think you mostly know that, but for anybody new, welcome. And anybody who's watching this as a pre-recorded video, I'm going to answer questions on the video. I'll put timestamps and post it later, but feel free to ask questions also on YouTube. Even though this is a recording, I will go and continue answering questions on the YouTube comments. So again, welcome everybody. For those of you who are new, yes, I can talk. For those of you who are new, I'll just give you a quick overview of what we're going to do. I'm going to, first of all, start off with answering questions that were pre-submitted. And you can always pre-submit questions. I'll do those first. And then I'll take questions in the chat. So feel free to add your questions now. If you could start with the word question, it'll be easier for me to see it. There's a good chance I'll miss it if you don't. That's why I put the banner on the bottom there for people who come in later to remind them. Also, at the end of answering questions, I will do a drawing. This is for people who are in my Real Guitar Success membership. They enter a drawing each month by completing 20 sessions. And when I say complete, they really just have to spend 10 minutes a day on each session. Then we give away a $50 gift card each month, mostly just to create some fun and give you some incentive to complete the lessons. But of course, the learning is the real gift, the real prize. With that, let's get started with questions. I got chat over here and I got the pre-submitted over here. So when I look over here, I'm looking to see who's adding questions in the chat. There we go. I'm back. Thank God. Okay. So let's start with the pre-submitted questions. Oh, I see a good lineup over there. Welcome, everyone. I'm finding, this is from Phil. I'm finding chord progression hard to go from G to C to G. Do I just have to stick with it? Well, yes, you do have to stick with it. I really underestimated persistence, the value of persistence when I first started playing guitar. And I see that in a lot of students. I get it because you have no model in your head to say, hey, if I keep doing this, it's going to eventually turn there. Yeah, you see people doing it, but there's a sort of, at least I had this sort of subtle belief of, but maybe they're different. Maybe they're gifted or somehow a little more talented than me. Something, they got something. Pretty much persistence, especially when it comes to things like just changing from one chord to another, everybody can do it if you stick with it. That said, you know, there's some little tricks. The G is a bit of a stretch. You can always, I actually find this 4-finger G like this, for some people anyway, a little bit easier, just because the 2 fingers together kind of anchor right there. And then when you go to a C, there's the regular folk style C. But for a lot of songs, this C, where you just move these 2 fingers over, going from C to G, really works well. It's more of a modern sound, so it works better with more pop rock sound. Traditional country or folk style, you better go with the folk style C. This one's actually called a C add 9, but a lot of people just say that's a form of C. The biggest problem I find with people changing chords is on one hand, they feel like maybe I don't quite have it. I'm hearing that in Phil's statement. On the other hand, they cut corners. Sort of the assumption is, oh, I tried it so many times and it didn't work. Must be something wrong with me. You have to do it a lot more times than you think, almost always. And you have to go a lot slower and be a little more conscious about it than you think. So when I have students practice chords, I'll have them play one chord and just work on that one chord for a while, finger it to where they can kind of get there fast. And that might take a day or a week or a month. No, not really a month, but a week, you know, several times a day, a couple minutes a day. And then I'll add another chord, do the same thing, and then have them practice slowly switching from one to the other. So now I'm going from the G to the C. And again, there are many forms of G. So if this is not the one you're using, don't worry about that. And very slowly with no beat, nothing. Then we'll add a beat and I'll have them strum a chord and then take 3 beats to actually change. Place the fingers and then strum. And we're building up. And then I'll do 2 strums, and then 2 beats to change, and so on. What I'm trying to say is that a step-by-step method instead of just banging it out and hoping it'll get it this time. Most students, that's what I see. Or the other thing is they play songs and they get to a part that's hard and they can't do it. And then they go and play the whole song again and get to that part that's hard. A very inefficient way of practicing chords. It's just because you're only practicing the part you need to practice once every 2 or 3 minutes. That's really a long way around the block. You want to focus on the part that you need to work on, really efficiently practice that little by little over a period of days, then add that back into a song. Okay, next, I struggle terribly with strumming on the upstroke. I'm hitting the strings too hard. I have been practicing for a couple of months now, and it seems like I just don't have it. I'm hearing that kind of, yeah, maybe it's me, something's wrong with me, I just don't have the talent. I get that, especially from adults, a lot. Not so much from kids. They just, everything's new anyway, so it doesn't make that much of a difference to them. But adults kind of like, yeah, maybe I'm not really talented, or I should have learned when I was a kid. It's too late now. With strumming on the upstrum, I got a nylon string guitar, so it's not so easy for me to demonstrate picking, but I'll go with this. I got a pick right here. On the upstrum, you strum down, and then on strum up, you tilt the pick, your hand a little bit so that it's pointing down a little bit. So when you come up, it doesn't hit so hard. It's also a matter of how much you dig into the strings. Dig in too much, you get that. Dig in too little, it's okay, but it's not much of a sound. You know, you're looking for that kind of brushing sound. Just do that 100 times a day. I took a tennis course one time, and the teacher taught us techniques and then said, now go hit 1,000 balls and come back and we'll do the next advanced course. Guitar players don't do that. I'm talking, you know, do this motion 100 times. I don't really know how many, but a lot, a little bit every day. And then try, when you go down, then you angle the pick the other way slightly. And it gets to be an automatic motion. You know, when you're thinking about it, you can't really strum that well. It's go slow, even slower than that when you're starting. And do it a little each day. Maybe try it with a metronome. Click, 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 and keep building up till you can go. Then add it into a pattern. My pick is really stiff. I'm not depending on a thin pick. By the way, a thin pick, if you're a beginner, go with a thin pick. It'll give you a little extra leadway. But once you get good at it, you can use a thick pick, and it's just a matter of angling your hand the right way. Thin pick, I forgot to mention that. Start with a very thin pick. You build up. I prefer a medium or even a heavy pick because I've learned the technique of moving like this. But when I go to do melodies, the thick pick works better for melodies. Thin pick, it flops too much, and I can't play the melodies fast and accurate with a thin pick. Okay, let's see what Nick has to say. Nick, any tips on staying focused? Yeah, we all need tips on staying focused on a given set of lessons or skills. I often try to learn too many things at once. How do I know when to move on to something new? Common problem. And I'm much better at it as I get older from practicing, you know, deciding what to work on, just letting other things go. I always can think of more things than I can actually do in the amount of time. I got a feeling most adults are that way. At least the ones I know. Yes. And there's a lot of things that help. I mean, for me, I'll actually sit and write some things down that I think I need to work on, because when I see it on paper, it becomes obvious. No, I can't do all that. I've got this much time to practice. I'm going to focus on that thing. As a matter of fact, what I did recently, you might try this. I said, for this month, I'm just going to work on this one aspect. And it seems like a long time, but, you know, quite frankly, I'm probably going to need more than that to get this particular thing I'm working on. But I just make that my focus. It's not the only thing I do. But I said, you know, whenever I have some extra time, I'm going to work on that thing. Oh, okay, I'll do some other things, but I'm going to go back to that thing because that's my focus. It really helps if you have some kind of organized plan. And that means lessons, you know, either an online course or an instructor that's giving you Not all instructors are organized. I'll say that. My first few instructors were kind of, what do you want to do this week? No, that doesn't work. But a good instructor has a step-by-step plan, or, some order to things. It doesn't have to be rigid, but, some order. You work on this because you're going to get to this, and we need to do this exercise because this will prepare you for this, that kind of thing. That helps, because then in your mind, hey, I know I need to do this now because we're going to want to do this later. So ultimately, you do need to decide. I would keep practice sessions short, decide what you're going to practice on, focus on that, and then play for fun or whatever you want to do. But always come back to the thing that you're working on. If you have some kind of lessons, you know what that should be. My gauge that I tell students for deciding when it's time to move on is I use what I call the 80% rule. What that means is when you feel like you've got it about 80% that the lesson is presenting, basically. And at least my lessons, I always show you what it looks like in different tempos and explain what it should look like when you get it. When you feel 80% there, you can move on. Now, don't go for 100%. You never get there and you'll be stuck forever. But a lot of people also, I meet more people that kind of brush through something, they get tired of it and move on to the next thing. You're just asking for trouble. At least with my lessons are progressive. In other words, one thing builds on the other, not always, but mostly, and you're really going to have a hard time going on to more advanced material if you didn't quite get the initial material enough. So the 80% kind of bridges that, kind of sets in that place where you've got enough to move on, and you're going to keep improving as you move on, but not waiting too long to where you just can't get anywhere and you want to quit because you don't know, you don't want to move on. Yeah, that'll make you stuck for sure. Hope that helps, Phil or Nick. Could you please demonstrate movable scales, both major and minor, so that I can improvise in all keys on the fly? Well, that's a tall order. Not showing movable scales, but improvising in all keys on the fly. That will take a lot more than scales. But let's start with that first question. Now, there are many movable scales. I'm going to show the basic ones, the starters I teach students. The first form is a major scale, and the root is on the 6th string. It looks like this. I'll get a little closer here. Let's see. Yeah, okay, you can see a little better, I hope. So it looks like this. That's probably the first form of the movable major scale I would learn if you're learning movable scales. Now, the minor scale, I'll show you a minor scale. Using, again, that was a G scale, and when I say the root's on the 6th string, that means G is the scale, G major scale. If I move up 2 frets to A and do the same pattern, now it's an A major scale. So movable form means you're going to get that name from the first note, and the rest of the scale is that scale. This is a major scale, so it's a G major scale. When I play minor, it'll be a G minor. Now, I hesitated there because I didn't want to show you how I play that scale, honestly. It's that stretch. I have no problem with that stretch. I've been doing it for years and years and years, but I get for beginning students, that's a tough one. Let me see something. This was an easier one. I mean, there is. Let me see if I can show you one. That might be better for a beginner. I don't normally play it that way because I don't like that shift. I'll do it again. Watch. I shifted from here. So you might want to start there if you want to play minor scales. That was on the 6th string, And you can pretty well, I better stop there. Just showing you a bunch of scales is not going to help, but I'll put some links to some other lessons with scales in the notes, the show notes, so you can give me more. But I would certainly start there and get good at them. I'm going to go on, but I have more to say about the scales. It's just I know there's more questions coming, so I can kind of deal with it. You'll see what I mean. Okay. I've read these before. Okay. Yeah, you guys must know that. This is not new to me. How do you know which notes to play when improvising? There's the big question. How do you play the ones that are in the chord? Or no, it says, do you play the ones that are in the chord? I think she's meaning the notes that make up the chord. Or try to figure out which notes are the melody of the song. So I'm assuming she means, this is Shulamit. Hi, Shulamit. I see you're on the call. I assume she means, basically taking notes out of the melody to the song. First of all, I would say both. Both are great. Notes from the chord. Let's get back to my big body or my face. Notes from the chord, grab notes from the melody, scale-wise notes. So I could stop there and say, yeah, that's the answer. But it points to another thing that's maybe a little more sophisticated, and I want to include this in here. There's a lot more to talk about. When I'm improvising, and everybody I know, we're not thinking about, should I play the notes from the chord or the scale or from the melody? We're listening in our head to the notes that sound good and then finding them with our fingers. Now, it sounds like a process. It's not. As fast as I can think of, my fingers go there. And that comes from practicing my scales, practicing arpeggios. That's playing the notes out of a chord. Arpeggios are chords one note at a time. Playing melodies. And then when I go to improvise, I don't think about any of that. Because if I do, it sounds like I'm playing scales, arpeggios, and I'm trying to copy the melody. I don't want to sound like that. That doesn't sound good to me and to most people. What sounds good is me using all of that, letting it go intellectually, and letting the sound guide me. And this is a problem, an issue I find with adults, including myself. I really had to break that barrier of trying to think out the right notes to play as opposed to hearing the notes in my head. And I know that sounds a little nebulous, but it's not. If you practice the scales, practice arpeggios, and you practice them regularly and over, they become part of your mentality. You start to hear those notes and know your fingers know where to go on the fretboard because you've done it so many times as part of the scale. The other aspect of that is a good practice when improvising is to just record some chord progressions. And I start very simple, maybe 2-3 chords max, and practice what sounds good. Yeah, you can start by thinking, oh, it's in that scale, but try to let go of the thinking and just listen to what sounds good to you. When you find something, try to repeat it and do it over and over a period of time. That will produce a much more musical result than trying to think I should play the C major scale. Oh, that's an A arpeggio right there. It doesn't produce a musical result. Okay, I'm going to go on. What are modes for? They're mentioned all the time. I don't know how to use them. Shulamit, probably modes are not going to be useful for you. Here's what I know of modes. I did study modes in college and used them briefly. I took some jazz classes. They're often used in a jazz context for improvising. Modes are basically, how should we say it? If you take a scale, like a C scale, and you start the C scale on C, that's the C major scale is a mode. It has a name called ionic. I haven't used this terminology for a while. Ionic? Yeah. So it has another name, ionic mode, but it's a C major scale as most people know it. The minor scale has another one. It's an Aeolian mode. Those are probably the two most common modes. But then you can play the same notes out of the scale, but start on any other note. The one that I happen to remember because I like it is the second one. In other words, in the C scale, the D, if you start on D and end on D, you are playing the Dorian mode. It's one that Santana uses, or the notes from a Dorian mode in some of his songs. That's why I happen to like that one. So in jazz, it's often that they'll learn the fingerings for different modes and then use that in their improvisation. Most likely not thinking I'm using the Dorian mode, at least not in the middle of an improvisation. You don't have time to think all that. By the time you think that out, the chord has come and gone. But by practicing it, it forces you to hear the intervals in a different way, and then you integrate that into your improvisation. The other thing that I have used modes in the context of composing, because I use them to create a certain sound. And you have more time to think things out and try it and then think it out again in composing, even though I still say the best compositions I've had were me listening in my head to what I was trying to get without trying to think kind of mechanically, is this the right mode or is this the right notes there? It's more hearing what should sound good. But my hearing has been trained by practicing these scales and modes and things. I don't currently practice modes, and I'm sure there's a lot more to that somebody who is more into that could tell you. Let me go on. Paul, any advice on how to hit the strings better while practicing scales using my pick? So he's asking particularly with a pick. And I guess he's missing the notes. The biggest thing I could tell you, Paul, is you probably need to slow down, relax, play with a metronome, and go as slow as you need to hit it right and then pick up little by little. I have seen many students, and I've been there myself, just try to go faster than you can really go and then get frustrated and say it's not working. Slow down as slow as you need to go and plan on doing it over and over and over for days, I would say. It's not the kind of thing you get in one day or one piece of advice. You practice it slow. You tense up too much, relax. Start with a downstroke and then go slow with a down up, but go as slow as you need to go to get it. An exercise I have students practice also. This one might help you, Paul. Matter of fact, I'll go back to here so you can see a little closer. Yeah, I need my picking hand. That's my right hand. I have them, don't use the left hand, just the open strings, and go down, up with a metronome. Click, 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 and then the next string. Do 4 each. All the way to the first string, and then go backwards, all the way back. As slow as you need to go to get it right, to where you can play it right, then little by little pick up your metronome. Now, see, you're just concentrating on getting the picking hand and not worried about the left hand. Once you add the left hand, it's another variable. So you want to focus on what you're having a problem with and then integrate that into a scale. Back. There. I'm getting the hang of this. Okay. The song I have been... Sissel is asking, she's making a song and she can't find the chords to play. This is a big question. First of all, I just want to say it's unrealistic to expect when you're just learning how to play guitar to be able to write a song and figure out the perfect chords easily. And there's no one answer. This is a skill you develop, just like playing chord progressions. There are many things you can do, but there's no one piece of advice that's going to solve this. It's a skill. So figuring out chords to a song, the best practice I can tell you is to play the melody on a recorder, maybe with your guitar. You can sing it. Depends how good you are at singing. Sometimes I don't sing in pitch, so I do a little better with playing the notes on the melody. But people who can sing clearly and in pitch, singing is fine. Then play your guitar with the recording until you get the chords that sound right. This is a practice. It's not the solution. You do that over and over and over till you get something that sounds good. You do it with a different song, it gets easier as you progress, as you practice it. It's not the kind of solution. You're not going to record it, oh, perfect, I can do it now. No, it's a skill. You're developing it. Now, there are some tips. One thing that I think really helps, if you're writing a song, a simple song, it's likely in a key. Make sure you know what key it's in, and then know what chords are likely to be in that key. So the example, I'll go with the key of C. There are chords that are in the key of C that if your song stays in that key are going to fit. And they're made off of each of the scale notes. I'm not going to go into the whole theory here. I will put a link to lessons. And Sissel, the lessons, there are lessons in Real Guitar Success in the theory section, specifically how chords are made, how you make chords on each scale note. The short version is each chord off the C scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, has a chord. They are C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, and then you start over, C again. Stick to those chords and keep experimenting with those chords till you get something that sounds good to you. Again, it's a practice. It's not a one-off thing. You do that over and over and you get better at it. You get better at both finding something that sounds good and deciding what you like and what you don't like, because it is subjective. What a good chord progression for a song, for me, might not be what you want to hear, and vice versa. I've been doing this for years. I still don't have a formula, but I'm much faster at it. And I'm much better at deciding when I like something or when I'm just trying to do something to make it work that I think others will like, but it's not really fitting for me. And sometimes I have to explore for days. That's okay. I'll make up a song, record it. I'll record a chord progression that sounds kind of good and come back at a few days later and listen again. And something else will come to me. Sometimes laying in bed, an idea, a chord progression will come to me that fits what I'm trying to do. Great. Sometimes I'll change the melody a little bit to fit the chord progression I really like. There's no one way to do this. Now, Rogelio has a few questions. They're all kind of related. How do you know what time or tempo or what the beat is to a song that you're listening to? So what you do is you find the beat, you tap. This is a skill, by the way. And then you play with your metronome. So I'll say this fits the song. I'm tapping. Now I play with my metronome. That doesn't quite fit. No, that spit up my hand. I'm trying to keep it steady. That's the trick. Okay, that sounds about right. I look at my metronome. So I was tapping about 80 beats per minute. That's often what I do. It's hard for beginners because you tend to adjust your tapping. You'll have to go back and forth, listen to the song and start again, realize you sped up and so on. But it's a good practice, and you start gauging, you'll start over time gauging that's in that area, and then get a metronome and just try it with a song and say, yeah, no, that's a little fast, and so on. There are metronomes. I don't have one handy, but I do have some in the house upstairs. It has a tap button. So you play a song, you start tapping, and you tap on the metronome, and it tells you what the speed is. It's cool. It's really cool. There might be some software on the line. I just don't need it. I can do what I just did pretty quickly. I can tell in the range I am and find a metronome setting. So I don't run upstairs and get my metronome with the tap button. But it costs all of $20. It's probably worth it if something you want to do. And of course, even that tapping, you start getting better at estimating what the tempos are. How can we learn to change chords faster and make clean sounding chords, notes or chords? So I want to refer to the answer I gave earlier. In short, start with one chord, get to where you can finger it very quickly within a second or two, then pick a second chord that you're going to change to, do the same thing, and then practice going very slowly, switching between the chords. I start with playing a chord in time with the metronome, but leaving a lot of room for changing, and then keep shortening that. So I'll keep shortening it to the point where I'm strumming 3 times, then I only have 1 beat to change, then I'll have half a beat to change, and so on. I have a whole course on this called the chord switching game in Real Guitar Success. And Rogelio, you're a member. Let me make sure I put a link to that in the notes, but you can also search in the search bar, chord switching game. The game basically does this with you, so you get the idea how to do it without having to figure it out yourself. And I do it with a bunch of chords, switching chords. So it's worth it. How much should we use a metronome and when? When should we use one to practice? How much and when? Good question. Actually, I use the metronome every time I practice, and I don't use it for all the time. And I don't recommend students use it all the time either. I would say, if you want to get a ballpark, use it for maybe half your practice, maybe a little less. Some practices maybe more, some practices not all. I deliberately on Sunday don't use a metronome. I just make that kind of my day to not worry about using a metronome and just play stuff at tempo. Because I always want to make sure I am focusing on my inner beat. I don't want to always depend on an outside beat. And when I go to the outside beat, it straightens me out. It gets me, kind of gives me a reality check. How good am I at playing in time with an outside beat? But I want to go back and forth, not always depending on outside beat and not always depending on the inside beat, because I'm not sure it's accurate. And it probably isn't if you never play with a metronome or a drummer or something. By the way, you can use a drum machine to do the same thing. I think it's great. And nowadays they got software online as well. I use on Windows free software called Cakewalk, and has drum beats built in. It's also a great recording software. And on the Mac, you got GarageBand built in, has a bunch of great drum beats already. It's fun, especially for strumming. Don't use it all the time, even the drum beats, even though it's fun. Make that a part of your practice sessions. Metronome is also really good for kind of doing exercises, engaging how you're progressing. So it's kind of a different thing than just working on rhythm. You're using it as a gauge to kind of track your progress. And I like that. That's actually how I use it more often. Rod is asking, when playing at campfire or other casual group scenarios, should one be overly concerned about what key you play in? And I know not everyone in the group can sing in the same key. So he's worried about a key that best fits the group for singing purposes. Or should I just ditch the capo and have fun? People often use a capo for changing keys. You can put a capo and play the same chords and it goes up a key and so on. But that's not the only way to change keys, by the way, Rod. You could just figure out the new chords for a new key. I would say I'd lean towards ditching the capo or basically, yeah, because you're right. How are you going to know what's the best key for everybody? I mean, even if there was a best key, it would take you forever to figure it out. Even me. I mean, I have a lot of experience. So I would probably, you know what I would do, Rod? If you're going to sing too, I would pick a song. I'd pick a key that's best for you and make everybody else kind of join in. Or if you're not a good singer and there's a strong singer in the group, maybe ask that singer, what's the good key for you? Or depending on what they know, fine. If they say it's too high for me, adjust to them because they can kind of lead everybody else in the singing. I wouldn't try to do a mass, try and find a key that's just fits everybody or somewhere in between. The frustrating thing I've had is sometimes the male and female have very different keys to play a song in, to sing a song in. But, I can usually play a key that's comfortable for me to sing in and people will adjust. And then if they weren't so comfortable in that song, the next song comes around and that one works really well. Good question. Yes. Okay. So I think that's it for the pre-submitted notes. Let's go over to the live chat. And again, if you're new, please, if you submit a question, start with the word question. That's likely the only way I'll notice which are comments and which are questions. Let me see now. I'm looking for question. A lot of comments. So yeah, a lot of comments today. Question. I'm having trouble getting bends to sound good on my acoustic guitar. Is there some technique that I'm not getting right? Well, I don't know that, Shulamit, but bends, first of all, on acoustic guitar are harder because the strings are generally thicker. The first thing to do is put lighter strings on your acoustic guitar. I've put strings often go by the gauge of the initial high string, and normal light strings, they call light the normal string. I know it should be medium, but it's light on acoustic guitar, is 0.012. We just call them 12s. I've put all the way down to 10s on mine, not for bending, just to make it easier because I'm practicing a lot and I'm straining my hands a bit. You might try that. Put strings that start with a 10 for your acoustic guitar for bending. The technique itself, I can't say whether or not you're doing a good technique, but I often bend the string with my third finger, but I use my second finger as a kind of to help it out. I have to use my ears too, because I need to listen to where it goes in the right place. And then finally, it's something you need to practice. So regardless of if you got good technique or not, you need to practice it to where it becomes automatic. And part of that practicing is listening if it's sounding good or not, and kind of analyzing, well, what's not sounding good about it. I would say lighter strings will probably help you a lot. It did me on the acoustic guitar. The reason it's easier on electric is just because the strings are already light. Tens are considered on the heavier side for electric guitar. A lot of people, well, they're pretty normal actually, but a lot of people do play with lighter than that, 9s and even 8s, which are like rubber bands for me, but it makes it really easy to bend. Okay, question. It looks like I don't have any more questions. A lot of comments, no questions. I'll tell you what, I'll do the giveaway, the drawing, and if you think of any questions while I'm doing this, just add them there and I'll go right to the end and see if I got any questions that I missed. Let's do the giveaway. And again, for those who came in after the initial part, this is for people who entered the drawing by completing the 20 sessions in my Real Guitar Success membership. There's one a day. You just have to spend 10 minutes a day on the lesson for that day. And by the end of the month, if you've checked off all 20 lessons, I put you in the drawing. So here we go. And this month's winner is, for the $50 gift card, Bob. Good job, Bob. Iowa Bob. I'm going to send it to you today. And everybody else who's entered, good job for completing the practice sessions for the month. And of course, the real prize is you're that much better at guitar. I've included a lot of little things this month that you might take for granted, but if you spend even 10 minutes on them, it probably at least open your eyes to the things you need to work on. So we're going to do the same thing next month. Let me see if I got any other questions. I think this is a question, even though Ryan, I can never remember the notes of a scale. Any tips? Well, yeah. Oh, Ryan, good job. He put question in front of it. You can do that. Okay. The biggest tip, I'll tell you right off, and this might not be something you want to hear, is you're not practicing enough. I only say that because I wasn't. So maybe I'm putting my experience on you. If you practice enough, that won't be an issue. You won't even think to ask that. That'd be my guess. But one thing that you can do to remember the notes, I assume you mean the names of the notes, because it could be just what they look like on paper or what the sound is. If you want to remember the names of the notes, just play the scale very slowly with a metronome and say the name out loud over and over and over. That'll solve that once and for all. As a matter of fact, probably pretty quickly. Start with one scale, by the way. Don't go, get one scale and then move on to another. I've seen a lot of people trying to do a bunch at one time, and that's a tough way to go. Just work on one at a time, and you'll see it. The process gets easier as you go from one scale to the next. You don't really need the names of the notes. I don't think. I don't do that practice. I'd say it's not bad, but I'm more interested in the sound of the notes. So when I practice a scale, I'm focusing on hearing the sound, and I'll play the notes up and down, but then I'll play different intervals because I want my fingers to get used to making distances between the notes. So consider, at least if that's the best way to spend your time, I'd say try it and consider when you're practicing your scales, if that's, I wouldn't say that's maybe where you want to spend all of your time, maybe as a small part of your practice. Hope that helps. How do you find scale of any song? By listening and start playing on guitar. Sanjeev. So that's a good question. You want to find the key of the song. That's a better way to say this. And you can find the key and the scale kind of all in one shot. So here's the short version. I will pull a link to a longer explanation of this in the notes, the show notes. What I do is I listen to the song and I start on the 6th string and I start going up and down till I find the note that sounds like the home note. So I'll go like this and I'll go one note at a time, and most of them sound terrible, but I'll get one or two that sound kind of good. And when I find a couple, I'll go between the two and figure out which one sounds more like the home note. And you'll see most people can identify which one just sounds less tense, sounds like it belongs with that song. Then I'll play a major scale on that note. I said, with the song playing. I said, did that sound right? I say, not quite right. I'll try that other note. Often, by the way, I don't want to get into the theory of that, but there are often two notes that kind of sound good. One will be the home, and one will be probably the fifth of the key. In the key of C, that would be C, D, E, F, G. The fifth kind of sounds like the home note, but then I'll play the scale on that, and then I'll say, no, that doesn't sound right at all. That first one was better. The other issue is you need to decide if it's major or minor. So I think that's the right note, but now I'll try the minor scale. Yeah, it sounds more like a minor song in the minor key. So that's how I distinguish between major and minor. Often I can, even without doing that, I can hear a song and tell if it's kind of uplifting, bright sound or a minory, more of a sad sound. But that's a good test. I almost often hear two different notes and have to play the scale on two notes. So and then find out which one sounds right. Once I think it sounds right, I might even play a longer scale. I think this is it. I'll play around with the scale a little bit with the song just to kind of confirm. Plus, it's kind of fun. Kind of improvise, you know what I mean, with the scale. Yeah, it's a little extra practice. But this is a very good, it's a good question. It's a good practice. It's a good practice for everyone to get into, if nothing else, to help you determine what key a song is in. And that goes a long ways with being able to improvise with a song or to learn the song. Once you know the key, it narrows down the chords that are probably in the song. If you're trying to figure out the chords to a song that you hear on YouTube or on somewhere else on a recording. Okay, so it looks like that's the end of the questions for today. Oh, wait, no, one snuck in there. I didn't see that. I can play some riffs or parts of songs, but I don't have a catalog of songs I can play. Should I strive to play full songs? Well, that, Tim, is not, it's not right or wrong just in general. I don't do that because I'm not interested in playing other people's songs. I'm not interested in, I'm interested in composing songs and playing my own songs. So I can play my own songs, but I can only play, I don't know, off the top of my head, maybe a handful or so of, Eagle songs or something like that. Actually, I played a lot in the past, and sometimes I'm surprised myself. I could play a song, I didn't realize I still know that song. But I'm not interested in playing a repertoire. That's the word I was looking for, of other people's music. If you want to play other songs for people, pick songs that you like and can play well, and use those songs not as your whole practice, but kind of to end your practice, to play through them because you can play them and it's fun. And if the songs aren't quite right, isolate the areas that you need to work on and make that part of your improvement aspect of your practice. Yeah, that's what a lot of people want to do. They want to play songs and show other people, and you need to develop a repertoire to do that. Try to pick mostly songs that are not way out of your range. It's okay to pick one really challenging, but it's really demotivating to pick a bunch of songs that you never quite get right. Go for a lot of simple, easy songs, 3 chords, maybe 4 chords, and then throw in a little harder one that's a little bit of a stretch. When you make some good progress on that, or you're 80%, then maybe add another more difficult song. I often have to bring students down when I was teaching privately. They jump way over here and say, well, boy, that's a tough way to go. Let's back up, learn this, and that'll make it much easier to play that. Not only will make it less frustrating, but it'll sound better. B minor can be played without the bar finger. It says it's a question, but it sounds like a statement. I'll assume it's saying, how can you play B minor without the bar finger? Here's the B minor I often teach students if they're not ready to make a bar. Let me go to my big picture again, my big guitar. I've got to get full on screen here. It looks like this. So it's this form. It's basically the bar without the bar. And I've got my first finger on the 2nd string, 2nd fret. And then these 3 fingers are making the same as the bar. It looks like an E chord up. Wait, no, I've got the I was playing an F. There we go. There, that's a minor. I thought it didn't sound right. It doesn't sound like a minor chord. Then here's the minor. There. So looks like a B minor. It's an A minor moved up 2 frets, and then the bar would be a bar B minor. But I just got my first finger on the 5th string, 2nd fret. There. Now, here when I play this high E, that's not part of the chord. It makes an exotic chord, but it's not a B minor. What I do is I slightly angle my hand backwards this way. It touches the 1st string. Now I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't sound even if I hit it. So I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm muting it. The same with the 6th string. There it's unmuted, but see my 1st finger. Watch my 1st finger on the left hand. It's just touching it. So this works for a lot of people. There's other versions. This is a B minor. You basically put your 1st finger on the 1st string, and then you try not to hit these 2 lower strings. It's just so high pitched. I prefer this one for most people. The other thing I like about this is you can see it's almost a bar. So when you start learning the bar, it's just a short leap to make the bar B minor. Okay. In the process here. There we go. There's a lot to be said for incrementally building. I get a lot done by just kind of, it reminds me of getting a wedge in the door, and then you kind of open it more and more. Get your foot in there, get 1 or 2 songs, and then add to that, Hey, you're welcome, Joseph. Okay, I'm going to close up for today. Thank you all for being here today. It's been a pleasure. This was good. Great questions. And I will do it again next month, the 1st Thursday of the month. I hope you all can make it, and invite your friends, but not the ones that you don't want to learn guitar. I will look forward to answering all your questions in the comments on YouTube for anybody who's watching this pre-submitted too. So I'll keep an eye out. Bye for now. See you next month.